We have talked about the fiscal fast and the time audit spreadsheet. So, did anybody in here do the fiscal fast? That's encouraging. Um, Fantastic. So, let me ask then, what are the reasons why you all you haven't even tried to do it for a day or two?
Well, I will say this.
Okay, I like your tone. So we're starting out great.
It really did make you stop and think when you like got on your phone to look at social media or whatever. It really made me stop and think.
Okay.
I need to be doing this.
Okay. Well, for the fiscal fast, sometimes it's like even if you go uh someone had said that they were going to do it and they had a lot of questions. You all may have even read that on Facebook where she had said she was investing in some other people's lives that required some additional spending. And I'm like, those are the questions people should be asking. How does it, if I'm doing this the right way, those should be the questions that I'm asking. But it's the things that you add on to those things. So, all of those things, obviously, you should be spending your time, effort, money on. But when you are, let's say, oh, you're running to go get some groceries for somebody, and then you're like, oh, well, while I'm here, I'm going to grab this, Coke Zero for myself. Or I'm going to grab this, or I'm going to run and while I'm out, I'm going to do this errand for myself, or, oh, I lost my chapstick. I'm going to get a chapstick while I'm out, whatever it is, like those little things. And so I do encourage you all to just try to do it, even if it's just for like, let's just plan for, 2 days or 3 days, because what it reveals is like your tendency to want to do what you want to do when you want to do it, with zero accommodation and understanding that those resources, whatever the resources are, time, money, whatever, could potentially be used elsewhere. So, feeling wildly disappointed that no one participated. Did anyone do the time audit? Great. Once again, super encouraging. So let's review. I do have extra copies of the, I'll lay them on the table over here in case you all, well, here you go, Roxanne. You weren't here last week, that's right. But both of you all would have done it, right? Yeah, teacher's pet, exactly. So for the time audit, I know it's like a holiday weekend, that makes it really hard. But just like really sit down and ask yourself, why do I not want to do this? Why am I not interested in doing the fiscal fast, or why am I not interested in doing a time audit, just to sit down and devote some extra thought into how I'm stewarding some of our resources. And that can be, like on this devotional life, commuting, Christian service, employment, rest, domestic duties, recreation, social. And, like I said, right now, the time that I'm investing in class would not be in any other week, would probably not be on that time audit. So if you are doing something where you're like, oh, I'm going to the kids with camp this week, and then you write that down and everything looks really great because you're like, I have 24 hours of Christian service. It's not, I mean, be realistic if you're doing it during a certain time. But I do encourage you all to do that, even if it's just a day or two, to see what it reveals. So like Mary said, that sometimes it just makes you pause and go, oh, wait, what am I doing? Am I doing something that's comfortable, or am I doing something that's profitable? And then it just kind of helps you analyze. So, yeah. And thank you, Tracy and Roxanne. I'm sure you all would have done it. So, back in the 60s and 70s, potentially early 80s, there were these like little wooden or plastic or wax replicas of like a bunch of fruit, and people would put them like in a bowl on their table. And did you all grow up in a house that had that, or did your grandparents have those? Do you still have them? Right. And And so, they were decorative and they weren't meant to be eaten, but some of them looked really realistic. I mean, like you right, exactly. And so the thing is like some of those replicas, they were so good that you could really be fooled. Like you would look at that and go, "Oh, I want to take a bite out of that." But upon closer inspection and scrutiny, you realized, oh, wait a minute, that's a fake. That's not what it appears to be. So Galatians 5:22 through 23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. The fruit of the Spirit is an outward expression of the inner work in a believer's life. Whether our health is good or bad, it will be one of the greatest opportunities and areas we have to exhibit and show these fruits. Our health is kind of like part of that foundation of how we get to show the fruit of the Spirit. And when we're stewarding our health, we can unintentionally trade what the Spirit wants to grow in us for something that the world says we should have. So fruit that at a glance may look real, but when it's tested, you kind of realize, oh, that's a little counterfeit, or it's even starting to spoil. And the phrase "work of the flesh" can feel like it doesn't apply. Like, does that sometimes, like when you hear that "work of the flesh," does that kind of make you bristle a little bit? I mean, for me, it's like it just feels so incredibly untouchable. It's like when you're looking at a picture from like the 30s or 40s, like it just seems so far away and it's in black and white. But if someone colorizes it and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that could look like a kid today. Like Jamie shares a lot of pictures from her past and it's so easy to spot her in every picture. But, it's like it feels so current and it's just like it feels real. So when you say work of the flesh, it can feel a little distant. And so when we can choose things that Paul speaks of in Galatians 5 and enthusiastically admit that we're not doing some of those. And so we can go, oh, well, we're not doing, let's just say adultery. It's really easy to like attach ourselves to the things that in Galatians 5 we're not doing. But what about the things that we might be doing? Loose conduct. That can be something where you go, oh, I sat and listened to a conversation that maybe I shouldn't have sat and listened to, or participated in some gossip that I shouldn't have participated in. Idolatry, we covered that in one of the classes. Anger, envy, jealousy. These aren't things that are fruit of the Spirit. So what are some ways we can replace fruit of the Spirit with fake fruits? So when you're looking at something, you go, oh, it might look like this, but on closer inspection, it's not. So let's start out at love. So what could we replace love with that might actually be, on closer inspection, maybe a fake fruit? I'll start out. Acceptance. So sometimes what we do is we don't want to feel uncomfortable and we don't want someone else to feel uncomfortable. So we're just like, oh, it just feels great if, like, let's be all inclusive. I mean, you can love a person and not love a behavior. And you have to be careful with what that fake fruit looks like, because they can be in your life and think, oh, this person's just completely on board with everything that I'm doing, saying, whatever. If you take a step further, it can be indifference. Like, I don't have any opinion about that. Lack of interest or concern, maybe even fear. Like if you go all the way to the other side of love, it can be fear. So joy, what can we replace joy with? Happiness, and happiness is circumstantial. Like how many times have you felt happy and literally seconds later, you're unhappy about something? Like you could turn around to walk in the other room and like hit your toe on something, and now all of a sudden, like your day has completely changed, or the moment, like it's just completely gone. So we exchange joy for something that's just incredibly flimsy and is a fake fruit. That's not, you can be in deep, deep, deep grief and still have joy. I'm not saying you can't have happiness, but if really you can be in deep grief and still have that joy. Happiness, it's fleeting. It just comes and goes. So peace. So what do we replace peace for that's a fake fruit? You all are really great at participating. So I didn't hear what you said. No, that's good. So yeah. Um, right. That's good. Maybe keeping the peace. So you're replacing peace with something that's like super close with keeping the peace. Like, I don't want to say anything. And I think we've all been in that situation. And yes, there are times where you shouldn't say anything. There are probably more times where a lot of us should keep our mouth shut. But like we can get into that. I want to keep the peace. It can be compromising. Yeah, it can be control. Like this is, I'm going to be peaceful if I'm in control of this situation. If I'm the one that's like orchestrating what everyone's doing. So patience. Uh, I'm cut from this cloth. Got to get things done. Move, move, move. Urgency. And that can be very hard for people that are cut from that cloth because it's like you're like, what is wrong? Let's get this done. And what's really funny is my sister, she has 5 girls, and she ended up with the world's slowest child. And it would take her, I'm not kidding, it would take one of her daughters 45 minutes to put her shoes on. And by the end, like the nearly Shakespearean rage you would feel because you were just like, put your shoes on. And so, it's like you can really have that, your peace can really be replaced for control. I have a sense of urgency. Obviously, there are times you have to get out of the house, but we can let it kind of slide in. Kindness. What do we replace kindness for? This is a big one, especially for women. I will stay in here for 45 minutes.
Well, saying yes to everything and not knowing how to say no.
Mm-hmm. How about be nice? Oh, yeah. I've done that before. Yeah, I've definitely done that. And, like, aren't you immediately convicted by the Holy Spirit in that moment where you're like, oh, I'm a worm? Yeah. Uh, Goodwill. Like, you can replace that kindness with goodwill, but maybe your intentions aren't exactly right. Or empathy. There's Allie Beth Stuckey just wrote a book called Toxic Empathy. And it's how Christians can replace that level of empathy with just accepting things of the world because you don't want you want to love everyone and you want everyone to love everything that they want to love and anyone that they want to love. And so I haven't read her book yet, but I am excited about that. So goodness, what do we replace that for? Aren't these hard to think of? They're really hard to think of. And so, like, it's hard when you really start, it's kind of like thinking about that fiscal fast or that time audit. Like, when you really have to sit down and do that critical thinking, you're like, what am I replacing one thing for with another that on the surface might not look so bad, but really it's, it's not good because of the intentions behind it. So, goodness, what did somebody say? Yeah.
I mean, that might be good, but that might not be best.
Right. Or again, your intentions behind it that it might potentially be like, oh, look at me. Like, I'm so busy, I've done all these things. So,
With kids, it can sometimes be obedience.
mm-hmm,
Like they didn't do it out of the right heart or out of the right reason.
mm-hmm,
They didn't want to get in trouble. So like almost the fear aspect
yeah.
instead of doing it because it was good.
Oh, I was completely raised that way. Yeah. I mean, absolutely.
Not addressing like the heart issues behind
Right.
this
Right.
Like, did you obey?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I was just talking to my husband last week. I said, I think that when I grew up in church, you got a check mark, like, or a star if you brought your Bible to Sunday school.
hmm
You got one for attendance.
Yeah, we had that too.
Being a
hmm
friend.
hmm
And I said, I think that breeds legalism.
hmm
Not that kids should never be praised, but when you think of who can do the Bible drill the fastest and who can memorize the most scripture and what is it really about, I said, I think that as a kid, I really missed out on just somebody talking about relationship with the Lord
hmm
instead of check this, check
That
this.
speaks to me. Yeah, that speaks to me. I don't.
It carried into my adulthood for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to think what we're teaching kids instead of putting a star on a chart and letting them pick from the treasure box because they showed up.
hmm
Or, you know
Right.
what I mean?
Right. No, that's
Good things,
yeah.
just used the wrong way.
Agreed. So I'm going to run through these just because, like, we're going to run out of time today. So faithfulness, loyalty. Like, you can be like, oh, I'm being faithful to this person because we're friends or we're family or whatever. Like, you can use loyalty in place of faithfulness to the Lord. Gentleness, that can be replaced with humanity and that acceptance of other people, but omission can be commission. And so, what happens when we're doing gentleness, sometimes we think this is one of those times where you're like, well, I'm just not going to say anything because they're in a tough spot. But maybe that tough spot is where they need to hear some tough love. It may not be, but, like we have to really understand what we're replacing these fruits for with fake fruits. So, self control. This is a big one, I think, in today's world where everyone likes to talk about everything that they are or are not. They self actualized willpower. So instead of say, like, really, like when I wrote down willpower, I was like, ugh. Like self control. I mean, you should be self disciplined, but when you're talking about willpower, you're talking about your willpower. And so you're replacing his will for your willpower. And, you know, you think, well, how many times are there things that you should have been doing for the Lord, but you didn't because you didn't want to? So Jackie Hill Perry, I don't know if any of you all like read her stuff or whatever. She said, when God sends me trials, one of his primary goals is to weaken me. Satan wants to weaken my resolve. Satan wants to weaken my faith. God wants to weaken my self-reliance. God wants to weaken my pride. He wants to deliver me from me. So when he's delivering those trials, think about like what he's doing in you, even when they're so hard. So Isaiah 41:10, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God and will strengthen you and help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. So in stewarding our health, do you see how both God and Satan are working? Like they are fighting for you. They are fighting for your attention. They are fighting to distract you. Weaken me or weaken my faith. But so when you start like looking at something, you have to really again use that critical thinking. Like, is this weakening me as it should, less of me, or is this weakening my faith? And if it's weakening my faith, I need to step away from that. So in the book of John, Jesus talks about the importance of staying close to him. He says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken in you. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. So can you see how he does this with our health? How there can be like pruning that he does with our health. He's going to prune as he see fits. And that's not always going to make sense to us. I told my husband that I feel like I'm going to be bald by July because when hormones start like doing wacky things, like, and I'm someone that when I go through grief or when I'm stressed, I shed tremendously. Then you add on to it like being postmenopausal again, bald by July. So, and what you do is you go, there is something that's being refined in me, and you may not like it. You may not look in the mirror and be like, oh, I just don't recognize that person. But God's working in you to refine you, to refine you. So God owns our health, and He can use it as He sees fit. We also need to note that mental health care is health care. There's a big stigmatism around that. Just like I just said the word menopause. Like, I remember growing up, and the first couple that ever slept in a bed together, married couple that ever slept together in bed, of course in bed. That's weird. Why did I say it that way? You know what I mean. The first married couple that slept in bed together were the Brady Bunch. And isn't that weird? Like, it was such a thing. Like, my mom talked about it. My grandparents talked about it. They were like, do you know this is the first couple on TV to be in the same bed? Now, if you're old enough, then you're also going to think about the Petries. And on the Dick Van Dyke Show, separate beds. I Love Lucy show. Yep, separate beds. So, it's like you can really think about those things and go, there's a stigmatism that came with like, oh, we can't do that. And I just said the word menopause, and it can make people feel uncomfortable. Every person in this room, if we're lucky and live long enough, will go through that. Yet for some reason, that word can feel like there's a stigma attached to it. Just like mental health care can have a stigma attached to it, and no one really wants to think about it. But, what you have to look at it in these terms, like if someone's walking around and all of a sudden they have a cast on their leg, you can be like, oh, something was broken. They needed to have that fixed. They're getting help so that now is going to get better. We don't have that same, it's not like someone walks around and has like a bandage around their head if, maybe they just need mental health care. And so we have to destigmatize that and go, there are things that people might be going through that we're not aware that they're going through. And are we adding to it? Are we helping them? Are we doing meal trains for people that are depressed? The same way we're doing meal trains for people that had a baby? It can be just as physically taxing on someone that's going through something that we don't understand as well as something that we do understand. So I just want to make sure that when we're talking about health, just understand our mind is part of our body. So maybe a person parks in a handicap spot and they look fine and they're able to walk to the door. And you just think, I saw them get out of the car, they walked to the door. They could be fighting a terminal illness and you don't even know that. They could be wearing a wig and have a terminal illness. The amount of people that said things to my sister when she was going through cancer, and it took everything she had to get into the grocery, but she was so determined. And people would be like, I saw you parked in that spot. But she also didn't want to have, she didn't want to feel handicapped. She was like, I want to feel like a 50-year-old person that's able to go into Publix grocery and buy something. And so people would come up and say the snottiest things. And there was one time where my sister just yanked her wig off. And, she was just like, I have cancer. And, it's like, I hope that person walked away going, there are things somebody's going through that I don't know. Like, I don't need to make that assumption just because I thought I knew everything that was going on. So, again, there's no visible cast, there's no bandage, but people can be hurting and suffering. So, you might ask why when your health is bad. Why did I have to get sick today of all days? I am a total freak of nature. Not that I had to tell you all that, but I am a total freak of nature, and I had chickenpox twice. And I know it can happen. And what's really funny is it happened 2 years in a row, and both times it happened the day that our family woke up to go on vacation. And so the whole family was super disappointed. And, that was like a real happy time. But, you could be like, why? Why did this have to happen today of all days? Why did I have to get chicken pox? And then you could also go, why won't God heal me? That could be a question that you have. Especially like when your trial's long, not something that's just short, like, oh, I have, a head cold or something like that. But do you ask God when you're healthy, God, why have you given me this good health? Of all days, why have you given me good health today? Of all days. This is so great. I've been healthy for so long. Why have you given me this good health? So are we asking the same thing with good health as we are bad health? But to be good stewards of our health, we need to ask God why he gave it to us in the first place. So if you ask a person on the street who's not a Christian, I forgot my water. I'm dying. Sorry. So if you ask a person on the street who's not a Christian why their health is important, what do you think they'd say? Well, they did a poll. People said to live longer, to be happier, to be successful, to be independent, and to do what I want to do. Like, all of those sound pretty reasonable, don't they? Like, that's so great that, oh gosh, that's so nice. Yeah. That'd be funny. You're like, this came from my son. Ignore the backwash. That would be really funny. It'd be like, now I feel obligated to take a drink. Thank you. That's very, very sweet. So then they did a poll of a Christian response, just to see how it would differ. So the reasons a Christian gave why their health is important, they said, now, I don't know if they said this just to be all churchy in their church talk, just to be like, I don't know. So I don't know the reasons behind this, but they said, to be alive so we can praise God, to be of service, because our body is God's temple, because heaven is full of health. Now, I would love to believe that I would say some of those things, but I am afraid that I would probably default to like the woman on the street, and probably default to some of those where it's like, to be happier, to live longer, to be successful. I mean, it's like I feel like my default would be that. And it's easy, like in a room like this, where all of us have the assumption that we're all believers, and if everyone in here had to, we're not going to do this, but if we went around the room and every person had to give an answer, I feel that there are people in the room that would default to a more Christian response. When someone's like, tell me your favorite book, the Bible. And I'm just like, it's To Kill a Mockingbird. It's like sometimes what happens is we get in a room and who you're around can influence that response, but is that really how your heart feels? So the way we steward our health may look closer to some of the non-Christian answers. So go back to the fruit of the Spirit. Which do you think offers you a greater chance to display them? Good health or bad health? It's a trick question. It's both. So when you really think about it, there are opportunities you're going to have with good health that you're not going to have with bad health, just as there's opportunities that you're going to have in bad health that you're not going to have in good health. There are circumstances that I am in working in heart transplant that it becomes very obvious which patients have faith, and they share it freely and immediately. Even when I talk to them, as soon as they're referred to our program, it comes up. And you get done with that conversation and you are just like, wow, that was encouraging for me to hear. Now, would that person have that opportunity to share their faith with as many people in as many ways if their health was good? I don't know the answer to that. But some of us default to, I'm not worrying about anything, so I'm not worried about sharing the gospel or my faith. But when you have a health crisis, it can definitely spill out. I love hearing when someone's like, oh gosh, I went in the whole room and like everyone was praying. Or there was one patient that we had years ago, and his therapy was music, and he played the violin, and I love the violin and fiddle. And so he had a lot of friends, and he was an older guy, and he had a lot of friends that also played violins and fiddles, and they all came in. And sorry, he was my favorite patient. He passed away, but like all of his friends came in, and they just played the violin in his room. And it was so sweet to hear the songs that they played. And it was like they just kind of played him to heaven. And it was really sweet. And so there are opportunities in bad health that you may not have to minister to other people and show your faith that you may not have in good health. So the big difference between what an unbeliever thinks about health and what a Christian thinks about health is based on what God thinks about health. It's not what we think, it's what God thinks. So the biblical principles that are foundational for discussing our health are all of our health comes from God. It comes from God. It doesn't come from 120 grams of protein every single day. It comes from God. So our mind and body are God's, and He has a purpose for everything that happens with our health. We don't have the right to complain about poor health any more than we have a right to boast about good health. Sure, we should be stewarding our bodies and minds well, and we can contribute to better health or the possibility of better health by the way that we're stewarding our body, but we can't really boast about that. It comes from God. Our job is to trust God and be content with the way He's dealing with us, and that's in good and bad health. So the second thing is we're to use our health for God. So when it comes to our health, it's easy to be self-focused when we're talking about our minds and bodies because, well, we're in them 24/7. And, it's always interesting because, like, a pain scale, think about that. Like, Tracy might be, have a super high tolerance for pain. And, I might say, oh, well, what's your pain scale? And she'd go, oh, it's a 2 today. And then I might look at Jamie, and Jamie might be an 11. Today it's an 11. And, it's like, but it could be the same level, but people are experiencing it differently. So, it's hard because only you really know what's going on inside in your mind and body. Like, I had cataracts, and, there was a whole ordeal around all of that. And it was funny because you can't explain to someone else what you can see. Isn't that weird? Like, you're just like, I can't explain that. And the older you all get, sorry for you young people, but this is going to be interesting. You get floaters, and what happens is, like, these little dark spots, these little proteins break away, and they, like, swim across your eye, and occasionally you're like, what? Oh, that wasn't anything there that was there. I just look insane. And super. And so, it's like it's so funny because you can't tell someone else where they really fully understand what's going on inside your body or what you're seeing. So, going through menopause has been absolutely brutal for me. I've talked to some people that that are in this class. They breezed through it. Like, it was a piece of cake for them. And for me, it was like I woke up one day and my body was like, nope, just no estrogen at all. And it was literally overnight. And so, that person's experience is going to be wildly different than mine. You can go, okay, well, I don't know what it's like to have a baby, but people who have had babies can certainly relate to each other, but they don't know what it's like for that other person and what they went through. So our job is to be faithful in the way we're stewarding whatever it is that we're going through. So think in terms of if your child said he was too sick to go to school, but then by 9 a.m. he wants to play video games, or she wants to go to TJ Maxx and stop at Chick-fil-A. Well, you're too sick to do the things you're supposed to do, but not too sick to do the things that you want to do. So we can really do that with our health and make those excuses where we're like, oh, I don't feel well. I can't, I can't really do this, or I know all of us have like busy things, oh, I'm not going to do Sir Frankfort, or I'm not going to go help my neighbor with this or whatever. But then the first opportunity we have to do something that we want to do, suddenly and miraculously you feel better. And you're able to do all of those things, or you just powered through that headache or whatever it is. So the foundation for the stewardship of our faith is it is from and for God. The good health and the bad health. It's for and from God, and we're going to have opportunities in that. So Romans 12:1, Paul tells us to present our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Serving is worshiping God, and we're stewarding our health well. So there's a book for moms of young kids. It's called Loving the Little Years. Has anyone read that? Okay, yeah. So in Loving the Little Years, that talks about spending our health. For those without children or beyond those years, we can transfer this to our circumstances and our season because the wisdom is still there and you all could see how it still applies. Just kind of apply it. So the author writes, our bodies are tools, not treasures. Again, even if you're not a mom, you can certainly say, I understand how this applies to me. Our bodies are tools, not treasures. You should not spend your days trying to preserve your body in its 18-year-old form. Let it be used. By the time you die, you want to have a very dinged and dented body. Motherhood uses your body in a way that God designed it to be used. Those are the right kind of damages. We're not to treat our bodies like museum pieces. They're not given us to preserve, they're given us to use. So use it cheerfully and maintain it cheerfully. When you're working hard to lose the baby weight, and some of you all may need to do that, I don't know. Think of it as like tool maintenance. Like you're saying, I need to kind of, go in there and do some things so that this tool can be used in better ways. I can do some tool maintenance here. You want to fix your body up in order to be able to use it some more. Your body is a tool and use it. So you all can see how her wisdom really applies to any season or circumstance that we're in. So some of us are using our bodies quite literally to raise children. And the inevitable physical marks of that process are signs that we're spending ourselves for the good of others. So you're going to look at certain things on your body and be like, I'm spending this body for other people. This is also true for people who are caregivers for their parents or potentially other seniors. Being a child who grew up in the 80s, Pat Benatar had a song my sister and I used to sing. It's called Love is a Battlefield. And if you love people the way God has told us to, your body is going to look like it's been to a battlefield. Because love is a battlefield, and it's going to require a lot of your body. And if you're somebody that walks through life with an extraordinarily tender, sensitive heart, like this gal, you're going to have some battle wounds. I'm just one of those that has a very, very wildly sensitive heart, and that is a burden, and it's something that I have to steward very, very well. Otherwise, it is a way for Satan to creep right in, and, I can let those battle wounds really get to me. So the second way is our society rejects old, worn down, and spent bodies. There is a point, and I feel like I'm at that point, but there is a point where you become invisible. It's weird because before, you're just noticed or people talk to you or whatever, and there is a point in life where you kind of become invisible. And it's because our society is tuned to look for, 20 to 40. That's the demographic of this person has worth, let's notice them. And then it just kind of, you blend in, and I'm very grateful for that. As Christians, we should celebrate and revere older people and look to them. They've done acts of service, love, and stewardship. Did you all know that over the next 5 years, 20% of the population in the United States is going to be 65 or older in America? 20% of the population. They're calling it the silver tsunami. I love that. But 20% of the population. You think that there's not opportunity in that to care for people? But if you think about it, our society rejects old and worn down and spent bodies. Our society isn't attuned to caring and revering for older people. We are so focused on chasing after youth or whatever that may be that we just completely disregard, or, it's like, oh, well, they're friends with each other. And let me tell you, the older you get, the more you realize, like, you're like, oh my gosh, like, I feel so young on the inside. Like, Jamie, how young do you feel on the inside? You are young at heart. How young do you feel on the inside?
22.
Yeah. It's, yeah. Yeah. So, how young do you feel?
I probably told my age right now after this morning.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
I feel 35.
Okay, no, but that's fair. I would say solid 28. That's kind of where I am. But you get older and you're just like, you feel so young on the inside, but then when you realize you're so invisible to other people, that you're like, this is so weird. And we have an opportunity to step into 20% of the United States population. We have an opportunity here at Buck Run to really mix and mingle and start intertwining our lives with people that are older than us. So as their needs become greater, we are already in their lives to help. Because if you don't know someone and all of a sudden you just walked up to them and you're like, hey, you look kind of old. Do you need help with something? It's going to be weird. That's going to be real weird. And so, but if you start really trying to foster those multi-generational friendships and relationships and getting your children to see value in people that are older. So when those needs come up, you have that opportunity to go, I'm already in their life. I can help. I can minister to them. So Jim Elliot once wrote his mother from college on why he took up wrestling, saying, I wrestle solely for the strength and the coordination of muscle tone that the body receives while working out, with the ultimate end that of presenting a more useful body as a living sacrifice. So you go back to the body's a tool. It's however we're going to use it. Are you stewarding it well? If you are able to work out, I'm not saying you all take up wrestling, but if you are but you can. But, if you are able, are you doing the things that perhaps you could be benefiting from by building up some endurance, some coordination, some balance? Balance is the first thing that's going to take a lot of people out. And so 65 and older, there is a statistic out there that says that people that break a hip and are 65 and older, 75% of those people won't fully recover. And 25% of those people will die from complications from that broken hip. 65, that's so young, you all. It might not feel young, but it is so young when you start thinking of those things. You want to really start thinking about, how can I steward my health well? And just even doing simple things like going, walking on a treadmill while you're, I can't read and walk on a treadmill. It kind of gives me like that car sick thing. Some of you all might be able to do that, but you could potentially listen to your Bible reading while you're on a treadmill or while you're taking a walk or something. Utilize that time. We go back to stewarding our time well. How can you incorporate those little bits of scripture or a devotion into those daily rhythms of your life, like being in the car, whatever it is? So by God's grace, we're all reasonably healthy. And sometimes it can be not for long. We just don't know. Yet, even in those difficult circumstances, God has still called us to be a steward of whatever we've been given. So, some of you all might really think, man, I've just got to get through these hard times. Like, that can really become a focus when we get into a season of, like, it just feels like it's just like wave after wave after wave, and you can't ever get your feet under you, and you're just like, I just need to get through this. But our goal is to accept what God's given us and act with the eyes of faith, knowing that it's good for us. We trust our master and follow wherever he leads as we steward our health. And that could also be even in the way that we are helping others in our lives in the way they're stewarding their health. It could be a parent, it could be a sister, it could be a brother, a husband, a child, whatever it is. But we have that opportunity in the way we're stewarding a health to turn all of our eyes, their eyes, our eyes to Christ. What is he teaching me in this moment? How am I going to show real fruit of the Spirit and not fake fruit? So, Proverbs 16:9, the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. Living in dependence on God means that he changes course, that when he changes course, we're to be content and trust that his ways are best rather than to desperately seize control of whatever we think he might be doing. And that's hard. I mean, when things start to go wrong, you really like dig in because you are just like, you're terrified because you just don't know. And so that's really hard to just lose. I don't like roller coasters, but who in here likes roller coasters? Are you hand raisers? Like when you are on a roller coaster, are you?
It depends on if the roller coaster, like if it's an inside roller coaster, I'm scared to raise my hands because I'm scared I'm gonna hit it on something.
Oh yeah, like they'll get chopped off, right?
If it's outside, then I'm like, I'll raise
Yeah.
my
No, not me. Death grip. Total death grip. And like I tighten my abs, and I'm like, I'm like one of those. And that can be what a health scare feels like, whether the health scare is with us or a family member, is that you're just like, you're holding on for dear life and your abs are tight and you're just like, oh gosh, Marcia, that does surprise me that you love roller coasters. So yeah. So when things go right, we must understand that our responsibility is to be equally faithful. It is so easy when things are like going well to just not think about it. There's also a point, I feel like I'm a Debbie Downer, but there's a point where you are going to start thinking about your feet a lot more than you've ever thought about your feet. And you're going to be like, why do my feet hurt? And then you're going to think, there was a time I didn't think about my feet. Like I didn't even really know they existed in any other way than I put shoes on them. And so like when your health is good, there are things you just don't think about. But we need to be thinking about that. Like we need to be thinking about how can I use this body that he's given me in whatever condition he's given me for his good, his glory, and his honor. 1 Corinthians 4:7, what do you have that you did not receive? And that includes the good and the bad health. And that can be a problem with our eyes. It could be a problem with our feet. It could be, oh gosh, I have great endurance and, I can run 10 miles a day or whatever it might be, whatever your circumstance might be. How can you use what you've been given? So often it's pain that God uses us to guide us toward a wisdom that is worth far more than the pain. Think about childbirth. He brought you through childbirth. It was, I don't know, it was most likely painful. And what do you all do normally? It's like, you're like, I want to have another baby. Like you hear like that little cry or you smell someone else's baby and you're like, it's like a chemical reaction happens and you just totally forget. You're like, let's do this again. And so, you can do that. Like God uses that pain to guide us toward a wisdom that is worth far more than the pain that we experienced. So Psalms 119:67 says, before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your word. God uses pain to point our attention to what's good and right. He does. but we get distracted and we look at the wrong thing. Poor health gives others opportunity to serve. Now, that one's a hard one for me. That it is so easy for me to serve, but it is so hard for me to accept. Like, to reach out and grab that bottled water, I was like, my arm won't move. Because it's so hard to accept that from other people, but it's so easy. I can look out all of you all. Like, you're so quick to give. I don't know if you're as equally quick to receive, but all of you all are very quick to give. But are you letting other people serve you when maybe that's what they need? And God's using your pain or your circumstances to allow them an opportunity and allow them an opportunity to experience something that they may not have otherwise experienced. So 2 Corinthians 2 4:7, we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. Poor health forces us to depend on others, and God uses this for our good in at least 3 ways. So God often uses sickness and disability to remove our pride and sense of self-worth based on what we can do. God's given us work to do, and in order to show off his work in us, sometimes we have to be sick. As stewards of our health, it doesn't matter how much we do, it's who we're doing it for. And sometimes we want like a quantifiable result, and if that result isn't what we think is worthy, then it must not be. But it's like, well, what can you do in the circumstances you're in? That's what he's looking for, the good health and the bad health. So the second way, it creates an opportunity to glorify God by depending on others. You might call that like a ministry of dependency. It's sad to see a once strong person act like they don't need help when they actually do. Isn't that frustrating? Like you all can, like, you all might even see that with children, where you're just like, if you would just let me help you, this would be so much easier. You think God doesn't feel that way with you? He does. So Paul seemed to accomplish far more in Galatia by depending on others in his sickness than he could have done in his own health. He needed those other people in ways that he didn't even know that he needed, but in order to like really accept that and be willing to accept, and for them to step in and use their gifts, he had to have some health struggles. Our dependence models contentment with God's will. And God's will is for all of us to be in community with other people. And that means accepting the help from those other people. So the third way, it encourages the faith of others. Watching God deliver your body or seeing your faith work itself out, even if God chooses not to deliver your body in this world, is exactly what someone else needs to strengthen their own faith. Paul had such a hard life. He was sick, he was beaten, he was close to death, and through those experiences, his letters overflow with gems of wisdom that come from his affliction. His dependence on God is a great source of strength to us. He's modeling that for us. So how do we apply all this biblical wisdom that God's given us? What's it look like to be faithful when we suffer from poor health? Be willing to accept a different role. That is so hard. That is so hard. Be willing to accept a different role. It might not look the way you envisioned it. A lot of us don't want to be in the passenger seat in the back seat. Like a lot of us want to be in the driver's seat. And so sometimes we have to take a different role because our health requires that. The second way is be wise in taking action. There can be a contradiction between us acting and actually trusting in God. Again, think about those fake fruits. Like there can be a contradiction in the way we act and actually trusting God. Has the steward now become the master? Hopefully not. Don't have fake fruit. Even the motive behind fake fruit is to fool and deceive. So the next way is trusting God. Our primary goal when we're suffering from poor health isn't to preserve our bodies, it's to preserve our faith. We can get that a little bit confused where we are so focused on our body, our person, our hair falling out, whatever it is, that it's like that's not really our job to be worrying about that. It isn't to preserve our bodies, it's to preserve our faith. And what is he showing me through this? All suffering is a battle for faith, and suffering well is what shows our faith to be genuine. So when you're thinking of that and you have a health scare or someone in your family has a health scare or a trial or whatever, it's showing that your faith is genuine. Like, what happens when you get to that point where you have the opportunity to say, yes, my faith is genuine, and it's like, hard stop, because everything you said before, you're not like exhibiting. So, fourth thing, keep your mind focused on heaven. The world would suggest that without health, all is lost. You're worthless. There's no value. Without your health, you're nothing. This isn't true. Jesus has a better way. He's the author of our health. He's the great physician. He's good and has good plans for you no matter what state of your mind and body. You don't get a pass just because something's going on in your mind or your body. Yes, there are things that need to be addressed, and yes, there is time that should be devoted to that, but that doesn't mean that you check out of everything for as long as that trial may happen. That you're like, I don't have anything to do while this is going on. You actually do. You've been given it for a reason. No matter your health, our greatest joy is bound up in our service to Him, and our stewarding is showing our care with a purpose. So we're stewarding our health well, and that health has a purpose, and it's showing Him. Your wedding vows include in sickness and health. Your commitment transcends circumstances. That's why it's included in there. It's a promise of unwavering love and reflects faith. Just as David was able to cast his burdens on the Lord in Proverbs 55:22, you too can cast your burden. So there's 4 ways to steward your health. We're getting ready to wrap up, I promise. 4 ways to steward your health. Use your God-given abilities in sickness and in health, even if it doesn't look the same in both of these, because it probably won't. Second way, serve the needs of others in sickness and in health. You can mail a card. You can send a text. Allow others to serve you. You can serve others in sickness and in health. Make the most of your time in sickness and in health. Jesus made time for the marginalized, hurting, and showing that good stewardship isn't just about talents or money, but how we prioritize people in our daily lives. We're prioritizing people. We're not prioritizing, I have $100 that I can give to this one thing, or I'm just going to throw money at this particular thing. We are prioritizing people, and that's going to mean that all of these other things get rearranged. Paul served in sickness and in health. Be encouraged by him. The fourth way, be prepared to sacrifice in sickness and in health. Sacrifice your plans for His. May we continually be transformed in mind, body, and soul, that we can and will show the world not a counterfeit fruit, but the fruit of the Spirit that lives within us. May our stewardship of our health reflect real fruit. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Gracious God, thank you so much for the gift of our health. Help us to be wise stewards of our minds and bodies. We ask for your guidance in the choices we make when nourishing our minds and bodies. For those facing illness or pain, I ask for your healing touch on them, your strength, and your unwavering presence. Grant them comfort, hope, and a renewed faith in your boundless love, but also that they have a purpose in their sickness as well as their health. May we all be good stewards of our health in whatever portion you have allotted to us. May our actions reflect your love and care for us. We trust your knowledge over ours. Use our minds and bodies as a living sacrifice for your will and purpose. In your name I pray. Amen.